Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Juliana Torres, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions and Diversity Pipelines at Roger Williams University School of Law. I'm happy to be joined by our Office of Career Development's Assistant Director, Abbenante, and two of our fabulous alums who are here to speak about different career paths in criminal law. So before we start speaking with our alums, I'd like to read our land and labor acknowledgement. As we begin our program today, I want to take a moment to reflect on the lands on which we reside. We are coming from many places, and we want to acknowledge the ancestral homelands and traditional territories of Indigenous and Native peoples who have been here since time immemorial, and to recognize that we must continue to build our solidarity and kinship with Native peoples across the Americas and across the globe. Roger Williams University School of Law is located in Bristol, Rhode Island, and so we acknowledge and we honor the Narragansett and Pokanoket people, as well as the Soams, the original name of the land on which our campus resides. We also acknowledge that this country would not exist if not for the free enslaved labor of Black people. And we recognize that the town of Bristol and the very land on which our campus resides have benefited significantly from the trade of enslaved people from Africa. The economy of New England, of Rhode Island, and more specifically of Bristol, was built from wealth generated through the triangle trade of human lives. During this time of ongoing national reckoning with our history of slavery and the disparate treatment of Black people, we honor the legacy of the African diaspora and the Black lives, knowledge, and skills stolen due to violence and white supremacy. As we gather here today, the movement for justice and liberation is building in our country, and we are witnessing the power of the people. Yet many are still being met with violence and even being killed, while others actively work to stand in the way of progress. As upholders of justice, our hope is to become agents of change for members of our society who have been met with violence, physical, mental, or emotional, through our privilege. And as upholders of justice, we believe that our students, who soon will be practitioners of law, can be and already are agents of change as well. Thank you, and I will pass this over to Nina Abbenante.
Thank you so much, Juliana. So thank you guys again so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. You were both alum of the school, so I'm just really happy to have you back. So just getting into it, to start off, I'd like to ask each of you, first of all, what you do in a very broad sense. So as a prosecutor or a public defender, what that job really means. And then if you could each just go into a little bit more of a specific of what you do under that umbrella.
Yeah, sure. I guess I can start. Hi, everybody. My name is Alyse Anton Smythe. I am a prosecutor at the Office of the Attorney General here in Rhode Island. I am currently assigned to the Narcotics and Violent Crime Unit. And so our unit focuses specifically on gun cases, drug cases, and violent crime that comes along with that. The Office of the Attorney General basically prosecutes all felonies in Rhode Island and some misdemeanors. And so for us, we are advocates for the state, for the people. And I'm not sure if you want me to go into detail what my duties are. That's pretty much the broad umbrella of it. And I guess I can get more into it after if you want.
Yeah, sure. That was awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
And my name is John Stickney. I'm with the Federal Public Defender's Office in the Northern District of Texas, the Fort Worth Division. Kind of very similarly, we represent the Constitution, essentially. Our office is appointed to represent cases where clients are deemed to be indigent, unable to afford their own representation. Our office handles all federal cases. Generally, it's just federal felonies. They run the gambit between guns, drugs, lots of immigration-related offenses, things like that. And so that's what we do. We're on the opposite side, but I think we both represent the Constitution and uphold, our protections and our constitutional rights.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So my next question for you guys, kind of getting back to what Alyse said, is what does a typical day in this job for you look like? So what kinds of things and tasks are you doing?
Okay, yeah. So we have a pretty heavy caseload here working for the state. We manage probably anywhere from 150 to 250 files. So on a day-to-day basis, we are in court. There are 3 gun courts in the Providence Superior Court. And so they are facilitating all of the gun cases and the hearings and trials that come along with those cases. So basically, I come in the morning, I gather up the files that are on my calendar for the day, head over to court. Luckily for me, court is literally 30 seconds away from my office. So we all walk over. So I walk over to court, and I am usually needed in sometimes 3 to 5 different courtrooms on a daily basis. So it's basically just handling the pretrials. And of course, if there's something that requires more, such as a suppression hearing or a violations hearing or a trial, then my day would be assisting with whatever is on my calendar. And what that means is we have pretrials where obviously we need to meet pre-trial. So we're conferencing cases, speaking to defense attorneys and or the judge that's assigned to that case, and just kind of speaking about where that case is at, where it's headed. Obviously, we have to make offers relative to dispositions. And then sometimes we have to meet with victims if there are victims involved in these cases. So that's part of the daily life too. If you have any other specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. That was amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And as far as my daily life, I know, unlike Alyse, and the federal side, I think the biggest difference is caseload. And so my caseload is much less. I have a caseload of about 15 to 20 cases at any given time. And the big difference, federal and state, in my opinion, I've never done state, is very, very rarely do we go to trial. And so my day-to-day, if I'm the duty attorney, that means I'm going to court to meet our clients who were just arrested. We might get 2 or 3 cases a day. We either get them on a complaint or on an indictment. And so if it's a complaint, that means that we have a little bit more time to get kind of a factual investigation going. If we get an indictment, that means they've already been charged by the grand jury, and that means our trial deadlines come quick. And so, we're trying to build a relationship with our clients from day one. These are clients who typically, if they have any experience in the state, they are in for a surprise, and it's really hard to build that relationship. And so, that's the majority of my job is trying to make sure that they understand I'm there for them. I don't work for the prosecution. I literally work for the court, but I'm not part of the judge's staff, and I'm there to make sure that their voice is heard. So, that's from day one when we meet the clients. And, eventually, if they don't go to trial and they plead guilty, our big focus on the federal side is sentencing. And so a huge part of my job is sentencing mitigation, trying to find any sort of information about the client's background, about the offense itself, to explain to the judge that my client is an individual. Yes, they committed this crime. However, these are the mitigating facts that you need to consider before you give a sentence, because in the federal system, they have a sentencing guideline book that will tell the judge, this type of offense based on this person's criminal history warrants this range of punishment. But we know that not everyone's the same, and not everyone should be given the same type of punishment. Some people might need a lot more time. Some people might need a lot less time. And so our job is to figure out how we can explain that to the judge and really just be their voice. So a lot of our day is client relationship building. And thankfully, on the federal side, we do get the time to devote to our clients because our caseloads are so much more manageable than the state.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. John, I really appreciated how you touched on kind of, the relationships you build with clients, because that's something I talk to students a lot about, how this is typically a public facing job, no matter where you go in law, and that it's kind of like customer service in a way. So that's nice to hear from both of you. So for my next question, it's a little bit twofold for you guys. So what I'm asking is how you got to this position that you're in right now in this current role. And with that, I would really appreciate it if you could both talk a little bit about education as well as experience, and how those two things went into how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So in Rhode Island, as we all know, Roger Williams is the only law school, right? So that school obviously has tons of connections with the legal community. And so when you're in law school, if you put the effort forward to network and or put yourself in spaces that I guess can guide you along the path that you want to go to, you'll most likely end up where you want to be. So in law school, I took the criminal defense clinic as well as the prosecution externship. And my professor at the time was working at the Attorney General's office at one point in her life. And so she had already had connections here. My externship ended up being at the Providence City Solicitor's office. And again, they're extremely connected with the Attorney General's office. And so I always wanted to do criminal law, just wasn't really sure which path I wanted to take. And so prosecution is where I wanted to be, it's where I ended up, just based off of connections, really. And with those two experiences, I was in court both times. So it really, really helped me to realize that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a litigator. And, you get to know people within the courts just by doing that. So I think Roger Williams Law had a ton of why, like the reason as to why I am where I am today. I literally started working here pretty much basically right out of law school. So that's my experience. Litigating has been with this office. And so I give many thanks and gratitude to the law school for helping me make those connections.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Thank you.
And for me, it's kind of similar. I don't think when I was in law school, I at least in my first year, I did not want to do criminal law at all. I don't want to go into it too much. I had a friend who was murdered about a year before I started law school, and your first year of criminal law is a lot of very heavy topics, including assaults, things like that. And I was so turned off by the whole subject. I did not want to do criminal law, and so I took advantage of the immigration clinic, immigration law, human rights law, refugee asylum law. And I knew my second year of law school, I was going to be an immigration attorney. But I wanted my options open. And so I took the externship class, the public interest externship class, and I was placed in CPCS, the Youth Advocacy Department, the Juvenile Public Defenders in Worcester, Massachusetts. And it was such a life-changing experience for me, and it completely turned my world around, where I knew this is what I wanted to do. I think going in law school, I think there's a lot of anxiety around being a litigator, because when I think of litigation, I think of kind of what Alyse does, and you're in court all the time, and you might have a trial where you can't prepare. That gives me anxiety. But there are jobs out there where you get time and you can prepare a little bit more. But it's thrilling. I mean, it really is one of those things where you're there to speak on behalf of your client, whether it's a state, whether it's an individual, and you're put in that role of kind of trust. And so when I did the externship, I got to observe some incredible attorney advocacy where they were so brave. They did not back down to the judges. They told their clients, those kids, that they were going to fight for them, and they did. And I think when you tell someone you're going to do something and you follow through, it's such a simple thing, but it's so meaningful and it's so impactful. And you can see that connection that they had with their clients, and that impact on their lives, to me, was completely life-changing. And so that's what told me I knew I wanted to deal specifically with clients, but specifically with criminal defense clients. And so I took advantage of that in getting this position. It's typically they don't hire, or when I was getting a job, they wouldn't hire first-year lawyers to work in the federal public defender's office. I had an opportunity in Del Rio, Texas, which is on the border. It's west of San Antonio, but it's on the border, and it's one of the busiest federal districts in the country. They had a research attorney position, and I just jumped at it, and I got kind of my feet wet in a very safe place where I could be kind of behind the scenes, but help the litigators, the actual trial attorneys. From there, I was there for about 4 years, and then I came to Fort Worth because this is my home. I'm from the Fort Worth area. So I because of the externship and because I was open to those opportunities and those different kind of experiences, I think that's what led me here. And I'm so grateful for it. Same thing as Alyse. I don't think I would be here but for that.
Right.
That's amazing. Thank you. In light of that, that actually makes me want to ask you guys one more question, because I feel like this is a common theme for law students. When you entered law school, did you have intentions of litigating? And if you did not, and I know, John, you kind of touched on this, but if you did not, what experience during your law school career made you realize, like, wow, this is something I really want to do?
So I always wanted to be a litigator. That was always my plan. One thing I can say is that I was on moot court as well. I ended up being on the moot court executive board. And so in moot court, you have to write brief, you have to do the competitions, you have to do the Esther Clark, which was all great because it's all great experience. But it 100% made me realize I could never do appellate court. Like, it's just not my thing. I don't like being yelled at by 5 or 6 judges. I like, so for me, that experience was great. And I would encourage anybody to step outside of their comfort zone. But it made me realize that I wanted to litigate. And actually, being in court and having those experiences with the externship and defense clinic basically solidified it. It's like, this is what I want to do. Nothing against transactional attorneys. It's great to have those attorneys as well. But for me, it was all about litigation. So I will say that that's like a different experience that I had that was like, all right, I can't do appellate. I don't like this at all. But yeah.
That's awesome. And I say to my students all the time, if you try something and you really hate it, that's a good thing. Because then you're not doing it.
How do you know unless you try,
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. So John, did you intend on litigating?
I came to law school, and just to be completely honest, in a terrible economy, hoping that it was going to get better by the time I left. And so I was very open. I think I came to law school wanting to do environmental or some sort of public interest, but I really had no idea. I just knew that I started to get, and I think this is just normal, I started to get very shy, and I started to get a lot of anxiety about public speaking, which I know is a very common thing. And so I think internally I was talking myself out of becoming a litigator because I was afraid that I wouldn't have the courage to be a public speaker. But then again, it's so much different speaking for yourself than it is speaking for someone else. And it gives you that kind of that courage. And the immigration clinic, even though it's, administrative law, we were able to actually practice in front of real judges. And I remember because it was an experience. I was in probate court and I was arguing for something, and the judge would not agree with me, and I couldn't understand why. I thought I was right. I couldn't understand why he wouldn't just agree with me. And that kind of back and forth was just, you get the adrenaline rush. You feel something that is really just kind of exciting. And that's when I knew that I not only that I could do it, but that I liked it. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm so appreciative that you came back to Roger Williams virtually. and gave us an opportunity to interview you a little bit about your careers and how you got there. Thank you again, and I hope to talk to both of you soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
this has been great.
Yeah,
Thank you guys.
you're welcome.